Good morning. Welcome to the Cyber Maryland 2018 breakout session on our education track, where we, UMUC, University of Maryland University College, has sponsored this for a second year in a row. It may be a third year in a row. I've done it for 2 years. But we're delighted to have you. Once again, I am Dr. Loyce Pailen, and I'll be your host for the day. I'm responsible for the Center of Security Studies at UMUC, and I've had the pleasure over the last year and a half or so of hosting these events and also handing out scholarships to some of our students who are actually in the audience. We appreciate your attendance and guarantee that you'll have a great lineup of speakers that will provide a thought-provoking discussion about what CISOs worry about and how their educational background have prepared them to handle the job. You will have photos and bios of all of the speakers in the program booklet, so we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about each speaker's background, but that's going to let us maximize the time that we have for discussion and question and answers. So without further ado, we will begin our program as shown in your program, starting with a greeting from my friend and colleague, Dr. Greg von Lehmen from the UMUC President's Office. Greg?
Well, good morning, everyone. And thanks, Loyce, for that introduction, and congratulations on organizing such a wonderful forum for today. So I was coming in and somebody recognized my speaker, one of the industry people, and he said, "Oh, you're speaking." He said, "No, that kind of overstates my role. I'm not really a speaker. I'm here to introduce the speakers or introduce those who will introduce the speaker." So just a quick story to make a larger point. I was a new provost at UMUC in 2008, and our president came back from a trip and she said, "I want graduate programs in cybersecurity." And I'm saying, "Well, what's cybersecurity?" And she says, I want to start them next semester." And I'm saying, "Well, there's a lot involved in starting a program. Would you give me at least a year?" And so she said yes. What happened over a period of time was that we formed a national advisory board of government, former military, and industry people to help us devise that curriculum. Because in 2008, we didn't know if cybersecurity was one word or two words. We actually had those debates, and so through a series of morning-long meetings, 3 or 4 over the period of a year, we would listen to that group. We would come back to them with translations of their comments, curricular translations, ask them to react to that, and we came to what was really the first iteration of 2 graduate programs in cybersecurity. So this is all to say that if you're interested in developing effective workforce programs, you really need to talk to the people who are doing the work, who have the experience, have risen to positions of prominence because they've been successful at what they do. Certainly that's what we hope to offer you today. As Loyce has mentioned, we've identified one role, the role of the CISO, which we know is really pivotal in organizations for a lot of reasons. And so as educators, it's good for us to hear from people who have been in that role or work for CISOs to understand what they worry about, to understand what in their backgrounds best prepared them for the role. So we have testimonies today and even some survey data from the Poneman Institute, all with a view to helping us at what we do day in and day out at the universities, to hone our cybersecurity programs, to make them more effective so that when our graduates go into the workplace, they can perform well have clear trajectories to important positions. So with that, I'll introduce the person who will introduce our speaker, and that is Dr. Emma Garrison-Alexander. She is the Vice Provost for our cybersecurity programs in the graduate school. There have been a lot of changes in our programs since 2008, 2009, 2010 when we first launched them. And Emma's been a very important part in innovating and developing the program in consultation with our industry and government representatives. So I'll ask Emma to come up. I do want to give a call out to our keynote speaker, Marcus Sachs. Marcus was on the board, the initial board that I mentioned, and his fingerprints were all over our cybersecurity program, and that's one of the reasons why it was so good. So thank you, Marcus. Emma.
Thank you, Dr. von Lehmen. How's everyone today? Well, we're very, very excited to have you here as a part of our program for today. I'm Dr. Emma Garrison-Alexander. I'm the Vice Dean for Cybersecurity and Information Assurance in the Graduate School at the University of Maryland University College. I'm also joined today by my undergraduate colleague, Dr. S. Bhaskar, who's responsible for the undergraduate programs. Between the two schools, in the graduate school, we have 4 cybersecurity programs, 3 direct programs, and 1 master's in IT with a focus in information assurance. We have a master's of science in technology, we cover digital forensics, and we cover management and policy. The undergraduate school has 3 cybersecurity programs that coincide with the ones in the graduate school. We're very excited to have had the opportunity to sponsor this track again this year. As Dr. Pailen said earlier, we sponsored 2 years in the past, and this is our 3rd year of sponsoring this event. I would like to also welcome you to the conference to hear our keynote speakers and the panels that will follow later this afternoon. I would also like to take this time to thank Dr. Loyce Pailen for her leadership in planning and setting up this particular event, and also Ms. Jennifer Hull, who served in a role of administrative role and really has provided leadership as well. Also to our marketing department, to Dr. von Lehmen, who is very generous in helping to fund this event. To all of our program chairs, our collegiate faculty, and any adjuncts and other support staff that have been a part of this planning and making this event a success. Thank you for choosing this session. At this time, I'm going to say a few words about our keynote speaker. His full bio is in the brochure that you had on your seat. Marcus Sachs, Chief Security Officer of Pattern Computers. Marcus Sachs is the Chief Security Officer of Pattern Computers, a startup in the machine learning and artificial intelligence field, where he is responsible for the overall corporate security policy and strategy. He is also a partner at Ridge Lane Limited Partners in the technology practice. Marcus is also a retired U.S. Army officer and was a White House appointee in the George W. Bush administration. Let's welcome Mr. Marcus Sachs.
Good afternoon. Well, actually, it's good morning. 3 minutes from now, it'll be good afternoon. Dr. von Lehmen just said in 2008, we started this journey of creating cybersecurity at the University of Maryland. It's hard to believe that was 10 years ago. And look how far we've come in 10 years. 2008 was also the year that USB thumb drives became something people were worried about. I don't know if you remember where you were then, but this was when they were found in Afghanistan being swapped with soldiers outside the wire. They bring them back inside their camps to do email, bring the USB key back out, and it would talk to Russia. That was a big awakening that year. 10 years prior to that, 1998, was the year that we found a bunch of hackers breaking into the Air Force, and it looked like it was coming from Tehran. In the end, it turned out to be a couple of teenagers in California. Set in motion what today is Cyber Command. That was 20 years ago. If you go back to 1988, 20 years or 10 years even before that, that's the year the Morris worm came out. For those of you who are around the ARPANET, remember Morris. And if you go even 10 years before that, 1978, that's when the Apple computer was launched. So in 40 years, we've gone from just a little simple homebrew computer system known as Apple all the way up to where we are today in 2018, where everybody knows what cyber is. We do still argue about whether cybersecurity is one word or two. I don't know that those debates will ever go away, but here we are. So I was asked to do the keynote this morning. I was thinking about, what do I do? What do I talk about? And of course, telling your life story, that's fine. That's nice and boring for everybody. But what I thought I'd do is just a little bit about what we worry about as CISOs. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the career field and what gets us to where we are, because all of us have had different things. So again, a little bit about our concerns. But these career paths that we take, and this is a focus on education, it's a focus on developing the career force. We all have taken different paths. So I'll show you my path later towards the end of the talk, but I'm going to give you some ideas about others who are coming into the field. If we look at the threats that we're worried about, cyber is a very technical subject, and it does scare people because it's technical, but there are many people in our career field that are not technical. Business leaders, finance people, all over the world. In fact, some of the best CISOs that I know do not have undergraduate degrees in computer science, did not grow up in a pure scientific world, but they've learned what the business impacts are of security or the government impacts, and have also then gone on, maybe got a master's degree or something extra in cybersecurity to round out their undergraduate education. But when we look at the threats that we worry about, you can kind of start at the bottom, the reputation damage, things like a phishing exercise or a website defacement, or somebody takes over an account. Generally not a lot of direct impact on an organization other than it's embarrassing. You just don't want to see your name someplace being publicly embarrassed. Theft of property is probably a bigger issue. We all worry about somebody stealing our phones, stealing our laptops, stealing corporate assets. Those things can be recovered. We can put them back online if they're stolen. But online identities being stolen may be something that's a little hard for us to do. Or if somebody breaks into your corporation and steals intellectual property, that may be hard to restore, or steals customer records. The third area, which is a growing area and has been building for a number of decades, but we're finally actually seeing it happen, is ransomware. All of you hopefully are very familiar with this, where the criminal groups will put malicious code into somebody's computer, gets it to activate to their behalf. They hope it spreads, the attacker's behalf, spreads throughout an organization, and doesn't steal anything. It just cryptographically locks your hard drive, encrypts everything on it, pops up a little ransom demand on your screen, and you have to pay in Bitcoin in order to unransom your machine. We had talked about this for decades, this possibility that we might get away from just simple worms and viruses that are a nuisance into something that would actually cause damage, in this case, logical damage. Well, we're here today. You probably remember the city of Atlanta just a few months ago suffered a massive ransomware attack. They haven't even completely recovered from it yet. Knocked them offline for several weeks. The mayor in front of a camera trying to explain what's going on, really unprepared for that type of an event. So part, again, of this being a CISO is also making sure that the people you're working for, your senior leaders, government officials, CEOs, others, know what to say in front of a microphone when bad happens in cyberspace. It's not just a technical matter. You have to react to it. The two on the right are the ones that really scare us. We don't see a lot of it, which is good, but it's the ones we really, really worry about. So if somebody jumps this boundary from enterprise IT, working on Outlook or email or whatever, gets into the control system, gets into your air conditioners, gets into machinery or the plant, and is able then to manipulate on that side, that is a very scary thing. My last job was the CISO of the power grid, working at NERC. And this was a big thing we worried about. Could somebody fish their way into a power company and then hop over and actually manipulate the grid? Luckily, we never saw that happen in the United States. We have seen it happen in Ukraine. That is exactly what went on there. They fished their way in and then gained control of some Ukrainian assets. Now, one at the bottom, mechanical or logical damage, very, very rare, but this is the top-notch thing. Could I break in? Could I cause damage? Could I cause a train to stop? Could I cause an airplane to fall out of the sky? Could I cause motors to mechanically break? In theory, yes. Experimentally, yes. We can demonstrate that this is doable. We do not see it, fortunately, we don't see it happen. But as I've gone through each one of these, everything up to that point has happened. It's just a matter of time before we hit the bottom one. This is what we worry about. These are the things that are top of mind from a technical perspective. If you remember WannaCry last year, this is what WannaCry looks like, ransomware in a control center. This is like the choking moment. Oh my God, oh dear, what do I do? Because I have literally lost control. If there's any good news here, what you're looking at is a photograph of a Russian railway operation. So ransomware that originated in Russia, targeting the West, bounced back and hit Russia and screwed up one of their networks. You gotta love the internet. It knows no boundaries. It has no friends. And when you unleash something bad on the internet, it may come right back. It's like spitting in a fan. It may come right back at you, and that's exactly what happened to the Russians. So I like to show that picture to show that there's a little bit of love-hate going on here, but sometimes the good guys win and the bad guys lose. But what we really are going to focus on later this afternoon after lunch, Ponemon has done a study on what CISOs are truly worried about. You're going to see a little bit of this coming up after lunch. One of the things I like to highlight, of course, is that very top item, competency of the in-house staff. That is not a technical thing. We're not worried about operating systems. We're not worried about patches, not worried about whether we have the latest and the greatest controls. I'm worried about the people. Can I hire experts to work for me, or do I have to take somebody in and teach them everything that they need to know with the fear that as soon as they become smart enough, they're going to be poached by another company? Or am I the poacher? Am I the one who's got the feelers out looking for talent elsewhere and stealing from others? This is a bit of a problem here in the Washington area where we have a government that really, really, really needs talent, but we're surrounded by industry that really, really, really needs talent. Guess who wins in the end when it comes down to finances? And a lot of really good talent that comes to the Washington area lasts for a year or two in government and is immediately sucked off into industry. I don't know that that's the best for our country, that we need to have a little bit more partnering there between industry and government. But I'm going to cover a bit more about this fear of not having staff on hand. So the education of our cyber professionals, how do we do this? In fact, is there a path that somebody who's in high school right now, they're talking to their guidance counselor, they want to know, what do? I want to be a CSO. Just like somebody might want to say, I want to be a chief financial officer, or I want to be the head counsel at some company, or I want to be the doctor that runs a hospital. There are those conversations being had at the high school level within the counselor's rooms. What do you tell a high school student? Do you go get a degree in computer security? Is such a thing available? Yeah, it's available. But is that really what you want? Or do you want a more well-rounded person, maybe an undergraduate in business with a master's in something computer related? There really is no clear answer, and I think that's our challenge in the educational community is, what is that path? Or are there multiple paths? Are there different options we can give? I'm going to show you some examples in other career fields. Others have gone before us. Cyber, as I was explaining earlier, we're relatively new. Only in the last 10 to 20 years has this become a thing. Medical science has been around for thousands of years. Engineering has been around for thousands of years. We've got a lot of other career fields that are out in front of us. So we'll take a look at what some of the others have done that have gone before us. Part of our big challenge, of course, is defining the security career field. When somebody says, I want to have a career in cybersecurity or just in security in general, what does that mean? Well, I can tell you back in 1998, 20 years ago, when I was talking to my father-in-law, who was a retired armored officer, and I was an Army officer at the time, and I said, I'm getting really into this security thing, and I think it's probably going to be where my career will take me. And he got all irritated because in his mind, security to him was that guy at the front of Walmart, who is retired and is acting as security, or the mall security guard. And he's like, how could you possibly think of that as a profession? That's what people do who don't have college degrees. They just stand there and occupy a spot, and they got a little badge that says they're security. I said, yeah, that's too bad that's how you view security. But unfortunately, across a lot of America, across the country, that's still how they view security. It's a low-level, kind of nothing job. Nobody gets into it. Good people go become doctors and lawyers and accountants and engineers. They don't become security professionals. So our challenge is, how do we raise this? How do we make this profession a profession? How do we attract youngsters who are in middle school or high school to see that this is truly something on the same level as all these other careers that a guidance counselor might talk to them about and things they might get interested in? But if we look at what we do in terms of professionalization, I have a few things highlighted here. To be a security professional, to have that title or to call yourself that, there is no mandatory anything. There's nothing about your education. There's nothing about certifications. There's nothing about who you've worked for. There's no licensing, none of that. It's just a self-proclaimed title. I am a security professional. Folks, we got to stop that. At some point, we're going to have to professionalize the profession. So let's look at how others have done it. How have other professions thought about it? For example, as lawyers, if I want to become a lawyer, I can get an undergraduate degree in just about anything. Most lawyers do get a business degree or something along those lines. But then I have to pass a test, a law school admissions test, in order to even get into Harvard or get into some place of some prestige. And most colleges and universities offer law degrees. I get my JD, and then the whole young journey starts. I've got to go work at a law firm as a clerk. I mean, low level with my JD. I'm Mr. Lawyer here, but no, I'm going to start at the bottom. And I'm going to be tutored year after year after year by other lawyers, ultimately making my way up, have to pass the bar, continue getting education, and now I truly am calling myself a lawyer. It is a well-known career path for those who want to become lawyers. If I want to be a doctor, same thing. Get an undergraduate degree, some field. Usually it might be biology, chemistry, something that might be medically related. Take another test, go to med school. Oh my God, I pity anybody who's had to go through med school. And then you start off at the bottom with your residency, and you start making your way up the doctor ladder. Of course, there's lots of splits and branches within the medical services field as well. But again, you're licensed, continuing education, this expectation of continued excellence. Do we see any of this in cybersecurity? Any of these requirements? Kind of awkward, right? If I look at CFOs, the financial world, accountants, others like that, same sort of thing, probably an undergrad in finance or accounting or something related. Get a graduate degree, but then I have to get my CPA. That's kind of like a bar to get into this career field, as I must pass this exam, and then I continue doing more certifications. Would you hire at a corporate level a CFO that does not have this background? Would you hire a general counsel that hasn't passed the bar, but yet will hire a CSO that has no certifications? Nothing to hang their hat on other than I self-proclaim myself as a CSO. Yeah, awkward, right? A couple more. Airline pilots, same thing, undergraduate degree, flight school. Most pilots come out of the military, not all, but military is a good breeding ground for future airline pilots. Lots and lots and lots of stick time, 250 hours just to get you started, thousands of hours if you really want to fly the big birds, the 777s and so forth. FAA certifications, experience. Again, you sitting in an airplane, you don't want to up front driving that thing to be anything other than fully certified. But yet you're okay with a security professional with no degrees, no background, no certification, just self-proclaimed security professional. Finally, engineers. That's where I came from. My undergrad's in civil engineering. That was how I started my road off. But even in engineering, we require accredited degrees. Master's degrees are very helpful. EITs, PEs, continuing education. Every 4 years, you have to recertify. Again, just like every other profession, there is a set of professional steps you have to go to. And like many other professions, if an engineer screws up, if I was practicing as an engineer and I design a deck for your house and you build that deck and you're having a party on it and the deck falls down and kills somebody, the investigation will start immediately with, let's get the engineering drawings. What professional engineers stamped off on these things? And let's go back and see if the design was actually correct or not. If the design was incorrect, that PE who signed off on it has personal liability, could get sued, could go to jail, as in other professions. Security folks, can we get sued or go to jail? You might get fired from your job, but because you're so hot in what you're doing, you're immediately reemployed because everybody needs security people. Yeah, awkward, awkward, awkward. Teachers, I can't forget the teachers, of course, because this is an educational group. Same thing, undergrad degrees, master's degrees. If you want to teach at the higher levels of colleges and universities, you have to have a PhD. Many educators have 2 PhDs. I mean, this is a very, very heavy level in terms of education, teaching licenses, certifications, it's all there. All these professions have professionalized themselves. We have got to do the same thing. We, the security community, have got to move forward. So let me just back up a second and ask, the fair question. Is it actually needed? Should we professionalize ourselves? Or if we try and go down this road, if we try and get too rigid, do we wind up locking people out? It's hard enough right now to attract good talent. It's very tough to get high school kids interested in what we're doing because there's so many other cool things that are out there they can get into. So if we go too far, we might put up some barriers. We do, however, have this, what we call snake oil problem within cybersecurity. The fakers that have come into the world, they just self-proclaim they're experts. They have, because we don't require any kind of certification, and they screw up, and they screw up royally, and they cost millions to companies. And again, the worst that happens is they get fired. And I'm pretty sure many of you have met the snake oil cyber people who are out there trying to kind of fake their way through this. So, that last little thing down there about liability. I mentioned that a moment ago with engineers, doctors, other professionals. Are we at a point yet in cybersecurity where we can hold somebody liable? In other words, if an individual programs a firewall and the firewall rule fails, or they put the wrong rule in and they should have known better, they were taught by whatever institute there's a better way to do this, should they be liable for, as in financially liable for making that mistake? And I see some of you saying yes, and some of you saying don't go there. Yeah, why are we saying don't go there? Well, part of it is we kind of like this world where we're not liable. we can make a mistake and we're not going to be fined for it. Again, at worst, our reputation might be tarnished a little bit or we get fired. But I'm not going to stand in a civil court and get sued for screwing up a firewall rule, or forgetting to apply a patch, or for not teaching people what phishing is all about, or even if you're an employee, clicking on the bad link and causing all sorts of harm. You're not going to get sued over that. I haven't really gone into this, but imagine the software hardware world, where somebody writes an improper line of code in C++ and they knew they should have done better, but yet that's what causes the buffer overflow that leads to an airline falling out of the sky. Will that programmer be held liable? Today's world, no, can't do that. In tomorrow's world of a professionalized cyber force, maybe we need to go there. Not today, not 2018, but these are the kind of conversations. If we're going to professionalize our community, we have to start having that awkward liability conversation. So maybe our way ahead, maybe where this takes us is kind of a two parallel track. This is not unlike other professions. So we can have the professionals, those become the leaders, the experts, those that might perhaps be licensed, might have liability, and they lead that type of professional life. And then we also have more of a technical trade area. This would be like the blue-collar cyber world. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of that bottom one is really enticing to people. They don't want to be leaders. They want fingers on a keyboard. They want to program. They want to write code. They want to break things and do stuff at a lower level, but they don't want to be in charge. I don't want to lead that SOC. I don't want to lead that red team. I just want to be the red team. I just want to be the person that's doing the analysis. I want to be the person that's writing the reports. So perhaps maybe we are starting to see a little bit of a split here. But if you look at other more technical trade areas, there's still requirements for licensing. A welder, for example, is clearly a trade, but you can't become a welder at GM or Ford or any place else, even at your local welding shop, without having some sort of welding certification, some way of attesting to the fact that you know how to weld. A plumber has to go through all sorts of testing to be a plumber, an electrician. These are technical trades. What about software and hardware? Should we treat it the same way? And again, I think you know what my answer is, of course. But in 2018, we're not quite ready. Maybe 10 years from now, if we're doing this 10-year thing, we come back in 2028, we're there, and we think we're ready. So if we talk about this licensing thing, let me kind of cover that a little bit, and then I'm going to shift gears into how I got to where I am. But licensing, for most other professions, I'll show you some examples in a second, is based on decades at least, if not centuries of understanding of how the physical world or the science world or the technical world works around you. So if you study how, like this building, the way it stands up, there's physics involved in how this building stands up. You can teach physics to people. You can teach them compression and tension and all sorts of things about engineering. Is there an equivalent in cyberspace? Are there physics of cyberspace we can teach? Is there a biology of cyberspace that we can understand, that we can test and retest and confirm that if I always do it this way, I'm going to always have the same expected outcome? Like in physics, I know if I push something, it's going to move. Good old Isaac Newton taught us, things like that. Is it like that in cyber? Can I identify those fundamentals? That's a great research question. Are there things we can lock down? When we come to licensing, that's kind of that next step. If we can find the underlying science of security and we can teach it and it's repeatable, we might actually build a licensing thing on top of it. If we can't, then we need to come up with something else, some other equivalent for the security world, for cybersecurity and cyber in general, hardware, software sides, of how do we certify that somebody knows what they're talking about. So again, like in civil engineering, a lot of what you see today, the professional engineer world, actually came out of the Civil War. There was a lot of frustration then because railroads, in just a brief history lesson, railroads have been around for a number of decades, but most railroad bridges were built out of stone arches, because that we had learned over the thousands of years that stone arches worked very well. Or if you needed wood, you built like a scaffolding. Scaffolds have been around for a long time, and so the timber trestle bridge looks sort of like a scaffold. Well, a lot of these bridges fell down in the Civil War, as you can imagine, and there was a lot of work to try and reconstruct them, and they would continue to fall down, and the railroads were very kind of frustrated because they wanted safe, secure structures. Following the Civil War, West Point and other engineering schools started to devote themselves to learn the science of engineering, to try and understand materials. What does wood do? What is this new thing called steel and I-beams? And what can we do? How much stress can it take? How much bending? And they began to quantify all this. So by the end of the 19th century, by 1900, a lot of the science was done, and it set up the capability to start licensing engineers because you had science that you could teach them. It was no longer just Roman arch bridges and do the best you can. Other professions like medicine, same thing, late 1800s, lots of snake oil and types in those days. They wanted to get rid of all that, and they professionalized the medical community. Finance, Chicago, double entry bookkeeping, other types of accounting, forced the accounting world into getting very specific about how this is done. Post-World War I aviation, barnstorming. If you're going to have commercial flight and passengers that are paying, I can't have that guy with the goggles and the scarf around his neck, flying his airplane whatever way he wanted to. We had to develop a career field for pilots. Are we at that point with security? I say so. So much of our economy depends on making this work. So our little story, if you go back through the years, probably 1950s, 60s is a good starting point in terms of when did research really get going? Can I look at the science of networking and the science of computers? There's some really cool papers that Rand and MIT and others put together 50, 60 years ago. They are worth looking at because in those days there was no internet. There was no social media. There were no worms and viruses and things like today. But a lot of really good thought going into, if I build this future connected world, how do I keep it secure? Keep in mind, this is the nuclear age. There's a lot of other concerns. Soviet Union's rising. Global national security was a big deal. A lot of good thinking we might be able to look at. NSA, of course, early lead, the crypto community have long been thinking about security. ARPANET from 30 years ago, 40 years ago when the Morris firm let loose, kind of re-engineered its thinking. And we've had in the private sector with Microsoft and others a lot of thinking. So professionalizing based on science, I think we have enough background to get started. We just need to start having the conversations and see if perhaps this is something we're ready to do. So let me wrap this up. How did I get here? How did I get up to this podium? How did I become a security professional? You already know I started off as a civil engineer. That's not security by any means, maybe physical security in a sense, but my story is my story. Every other CSO, every other security professional has a different story, a different path to get here. So my undergrad, Georgia Tech is where I come from. Ramblin' Wreck, rah, 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 to hell with Georgia, all that good stuff. But it's in civil engineering. And back then, I'm programming in Fortran using punch cards. And I learned how to program. Programming is kind of fun. What's security? Nobody knew. Professor would tell you, when you log in, don't break things. Okay, thanks, professor, I can do that. Did we figure out how to abuse the system back in the 80s and 70s? Of course we did. We were kids in college. That's what college kids do. We would write programs to circumvent, to give ourselves extra time on the mainframe, and of course we do all that. I went on and got a master's degree many, many years later in an interesting thing called Science and Technology Commercialization. It's like an MBA in startups. Uncle Sam sent me to do that. That was 20 years ago. That was in 1998, to get a degree in how to build a startup. Absolutely fascinating. Very helpful in my military career because we were building these little small military units. Finally went on and actually did get a computer science degree from James Madison. And unfortunately, my doctorate, I got started on it, ran out of gas. I'm ABD. Sorry for the rest of you who are doctors. I'll catch up with you someday. You all know the pain it goes through. Just eventually you run out of gas. Maybe when I fully retire, I'll get there. But I was an Army officer for 20 years. Learned all about security from a physical perspective. Had no idea this would lead to a cybersecurity world. But my world began to change about 1991, 92, when Uncle Sam decided that I should not do civil engineering anymore. but it was time to start getting into computer networking. And I got sent to 18th Airborne Corps at Fort Bragg, North Carolina in '93 and took over 18th Airborne Corps' networks. That was the hobbyist inside of me. I had a strong hobby background in this stuff. Ham radio guy since I was like 12 or 13 years old. So for me as a Corps of Engineers guy working with the Signal Corps doing signaling things, it was a neat little diversion. Thought I might do it for a year, go right back to engineering. But during that year, I found out that the Signal Corps air conditions everything, and all the computers have to stay nice and cold. And Fort Bragg can get very, very hot in the summertime. And I'm looking at my engineer buddies out there just sweating and being miserable, and my new Signal Corps friends all being cozy and comfortable in their little air-conditioned shelters. It does not take a rocket scientist to figure out where I wanted to stay for the rest of my career in the military. So I wound up going there. September 11th happened. I was in the process of retiring, working for a little organization called the Joint Task Force for Computer Network Defense, or JTF-C&D, the precursor of Cyber Command. And about a week or two after September 11th, White House called, said, hey, I hear that you're retiring. There's a hacker in the group. And would you like to work at the White House after you retire? Okay, tough question, because I was going to go to industry and work for General Dynamics. White House, General Dynamics, hard choice. Wound up at the White House, totally unexpected. Worked for Condoleezza Rice in the National Security Council and learned a lot about very, very strategic level security. Helped create Homeland Security, kind of orbited in that world for a while. Worked for SANS for a little bit, SRI. About 8 years at Verizon, and all of these in security jobs, just kind of making my way up. My first CSO job was about 3 years ago with NERC, and these are the guys that regulate the power grid. And when I left NERC at the end of last year, I figured I'd go on to another big corporation, maybe a bank or something, and this little startup started knocking on my door, said, we would like you to be our CSO at a startup. And I figured, okay, I've never done the startup thing. This would be kind of fun. So I'm actually able to start literally small and build security into a small company and their products and services, as well as the mindset of the employees, helping them to think securely. And what I told them from the get-go, I'm here to make your life better and more productive. I'm not here to make your life miserable. If I ever start messing you up, if I ever start slowing you down, throttle me. I want you to do your job securely. I don't want to ever be thought of somebody who's not letting you do your job. And this has been a good philosophy for most security people, is to think about how to do your job. How is it that you can help? Again, I talked about different roles, military, policy expert, blah, 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 blah. That was my computer system in the upper right-hand corner about 20 years ago. Military cybersecurity at its best back in the 90s. So last thoughts. Good security people are naturally curious. You have to be. You don't know where the threats are coming from. You always have to be asking, thinking, and what-ifing, where are the unknowns, what might they do? Thinking like the bad guys is not a bad thing. It's not like, unlike law enforcement, where the very best law enforcement professionals are those who think like criminals and think about how you might break something. That's how you go after them. You have to be able to play well. You've got to have good bedside manners. The worst security people I've seen are those who are so technically focused that they cannot talk to other people. They don't know how to interact. They have no social skills. And so that's a key piece. Blends of backgrounds, technical, business, other things, extremely helpful. And then those last couple of things there, security by itself is not the objective. Whatever the business is you're working for, the organization, the institution, whatever their role is, that's the objective. Your job as a security person is to get them there securely, whatever that means to the organization. It's not that you're doing security as the primary role. And a lot of my peers miss that point. They think it's all about them, it's all about security. No, we are in a supporting role. The exception would be if you're a security company. You know, if you're McAfee or Symantec, okay, a little bit different there. But I could even argue with them, it's all about shareholder value. And it's about making money, not necessarily about being secure. Does everybody kind of follow that? And these are the kind of things we as security professionals need to start teaching the youngsters coming up through the level. There's about the profession. Again, these other professions I talked about, they teach their youngsters, they give them the history, they bring the philosophies involved. We need to do the same sort of thing. So folks, that's it from me. I've got a few minutes until lunchtime. Dr. Pailen, wherever she got off to, there you are. If you want to take a few questions, and then I think it's going to be lunchtime.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ayodeji Ogundur. I'm a doctoral student from Bowie State University. I've been having...
Please finish your doctorate. Don't do like me.
I'm actually in my last year now.
Good.
I've been having this kind of two-minded issue. Someone once told me that taking cybersecurity programs to a certain level is like narrowing yourself or boxing yourself into a corner. I'm doing my PhD in computer science, and I was told that computer science is like a master of everything, but you are not specified. You are not really a master of, like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. I just want to have your opinion on that issue. That is it true that taking cybersecurity as a course or as a terminal degree, are you kind of narrowing yourself into a corner because technically there are so many cybersecurity jobs out there and you don't have the edge over the competition out there?
But I think what's key is your not just your education, but your experience and your passion and your, as I pointed out earlier, your natural curiosity. So some of the best cybersecurity people don't have degrees, but what they've done is they have a personal burning passion for this stuff. They're hobbyists, and they think about it, breathe it 24/7. Some of those who have degrees think about it, breathe it 24/7. It kind of depends on what you want to do. Getting a PhD in something generally means you're going to go into a world where you're going to be doing a lot of giving back, lecturing, teaching, putting that degree to work. The business world, if they look at you and say you've got a PhD in cybersecurity, it's like, well, that's great. What's your experience? What have you done? Or give you the hard test. Here's 5,000 lines of snort. Tell me what I'm seeing. If you're comfortable doing that, or can you write me up a little one-page security plan for how I address phishing in my organization? If you can rattle that off, that to me is very, very important. I think the degree is important, but in the business world, they're not really looking for that. They really want to see your chops. What is your experience? What's your passion? What's your desire? So you're not really narrowing yourself down unless that's what you want to do. Yeah, if you want to be narrow, fine. But I think any education, anything like that is good for you. And my congratulations to you for finishing your PhD. I think that's really awesome. I'm jealous. But keep going. And once you're done with that, continue your education. That's another piece we tell people. Don't just stop with the undergrad or the master's or the PhD. You've got to continue doing that. Our world changes so often that if you stop getting educated, you're behind the scenes. So thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, sorry.
Oh, we
yes.
got one more.
Am I the last one? Good afternoon. Wonderful presentation. So my name is Deli. I have been in the information assurance field more on the compliance auditing policy side for about 18 years. And I do have my PhD in leadership.
Oh, good.
But my dissertation was the leadership of technical teams. So I say all this to say, you noted that we have to professionalize the cybersecurity field, which I completely agree, because there has been some staff that did not know what they're doing because they weren't properly trained. Now, IT as a whole, what would you say about that? Because we have system admins, we have developers, we have, mail admins, network engineers who, it was just their passion and they got certified. So what would you say?
Every time you saw security in there, just
Yeah.
replace it with information technology.
Okay. Okay.
I'm keeping this narrowly focused on security
Okay.
because of why we're here, but you're spot on. The
Okay.
broader field. Think
Yeah.
of cybersecurity as like a form of surgery in the medical world. There's large medicine from private practitioners to specialists, and where security is just a little piece of the bigger IT world or
Okay.
a bigger infrastructure world, if you want to even think of it that way. So yeah, you're spot on. IT is unfortunately one of those areas, both from the human side as well as the products and services. Trillions of dollars of industry worldwide, but very, very, very little oversight, no laws, no, where's the equivalent of an oversight agency like there is for airlines and doctors and every other profession? There's nothing like that for IT. And I'm not begging there to be one,
Right.
but I am pointing out it's a very interesting world that has no oversight, no regulations,
Okay.
no other than regular business law that's in place. So,
I do have one last follow-on
that's
question.
it.
Now, so in the cyber world, and you've noted in with the gentleman's question, talking about how there's the leadership role, and then there's what I call the subject matter expertise. So in your opinion, do you think the SMEs should also get a degree, or would you consider the SMEs for the technical certifications versus somebody like myself who wants to get into the higher leadership role with the degrees?
The answer is yes to both. The certifications and so forth are very good to have at a tactical level, but as your career matures, if you don't have that broader higher education, which is generally what a college degree is going to bring to you. It was 17 years from the time I went from undergrad to when I took my first master's course. I'm so grateful I did that. I did do a master's degree right out of undergrad because I was just a student. I had no business experience. 17 years later, I know why I'm in grad school. I'm there to learn. I'm not there to party. I'm not there to cheer for the football team. I'm there to learn. I guess we're running out of time. But thank you for your questions. Doctor, over to you.
University of Maryland University College is now University of Maryland Global Campus.